Hello and welcome to Leadership Viewpoint. This is that panel discussion you've been waiting for, or at least that's what I'm hoping. We've got 5 business leaders who are here to share with us their take on this entire space of scale. Our intent is that over the next 45 minutes, we are hoping you'll hear some insights, some interesting tidbits and stories about skilling and learning. And hopefully at the end of it all, you'll have actionable takeaway that will allow you to kind of become the kind of person you were meant to be. So without further ado, let me introduce to you the fabulous 5 that we have on our panel today. Up first, we've got Sairee Chahal. Sairee is the founder and CEO of SHEROES. SHEROES is widely regarded as the world's biggest online ecosystem for women. Sairee's won several awards for the kind of work that she's done. But forget all those awards. Like many of you in the audience, I'll only say this much. I'm a big fan of Sairee and the kind of work that she does. So welcome, Sairee.
Thank you so much.
Second, we've also got Abhilash Misra. He's been a banker and a finance person, so knows where the money is as far as careers and skills and business are concerned. And it's interesting that apart from working with several big banks, Abhilash has also been in academia and used to be heading executive education at the prestigious Chicago Booth School of Business, of which he's actually an alum. Currently, Abhilash is the CEO of the National Stock Exchange. I'm not sure how many of you know that there is such an academy, but of course I have bad news for you because Abhilash will not be sharing stock tips today. He'll only be sharing some tips on how you can increase the value of your own stock. Next up is Sanket Atal, who is the managing director of Intuit, a man who's actually been through several countries in his life, was born in Thailand, went to the US for education, worked there, and now, of course, is based out of Bangalore. But here's the interesting bit. Sanket is passionate about innovation, and he has several patents to his credit. And I'm hoping that today we'll hear one of those patents on what does it take for us to become better people. Amit Dayal, who is the vice president and general manager at Adobe, someone who's actually heading a vertical which is into digital learning, publishing and printing services. And interestingly enough, Amit is someone who spent several years in Silicon Valley and therefore has seen what digital does to businesses and to people. And I'm guessing that's a theme that you'll hear a lot more about, not just in this panel discussion, but indeed in the years ahead. And as the cliche goes, last but not the least, is Kamal Bali. Kamal is the man on a mission. He's trying to ensure that all of us in India drive in safe vehicles. Yep, you guessed right. He's the man who heads up the Volvo group in India. I could tell you a lot about Kamal, but I'm going to stick to just one bit. Kamal has been knighted by their majesties, the King and Queen of Sweden, for his contribution to the growth and promotion of Swedish industry in India. So, Sir Kamal, good to have you on this panel. So let's get started then. And what I want to do is to really get the ball rolling with Sanket. And Sanket, I want to ask you, as someone who's now been through businesses, large businesses like Oracle, been with a business like Make My Trip, which is really disrupting the world, and now as the head of Intuit. Tell me, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see facing your business and that you see as a leader, particularly perhaps from a skilling standpoint?
So, it's a very trying time that we are in right now. Just a few months ago, we could not have imagined that we'd all be sitting at home and doing a conference like this. So a rapid adjustment has happened. I'm glad to say that majority of the engineers are very functional in this space. But at the same time, while productivity is there and we're able to produce amazing products, there are certain aspects which need to be looked at very, very carefully. For example, the softer side of working. We're humans, we'd like to interact. We'd like to be able to get on the whiteboard and have discussions. How do you enable that? There is a loneliness aspect. So here I am sitting on my desk talking to 5 wonderful people, but I am by myself in this room throughout the day. How do we deal with those kind of things? So those are aspects which cannot be ignored at this point in time. We have to take a very careful look at that. In addition to that, from the management side of things, when you're managing a team and the entire team is virtual, that's a skill set not many people have. And we have to get trained very, very quickly to see how we can get to be very productive and at the same time maintain the company culture in a virtual environment.
Super. And from a virtual skilling standpoint, tell us, what's that one change that you've made in the last 3-4 months to try and keep up with the times?
Well, first of all, learning all of this fancy technologies, whether it's a Zoom or Google Meetup or whatnot. But I won't talk about the tech part here. The big change I have made and I've learned over time is how to have separation of work and personal space. So when this whole thing first started, I was working, pretty much 16, 17 hours a day because it was just so easy. There's no commute and you're right there with your laptop and working. But since then, what I've done is I've established a space where I work out of, and that's my office. I work from here. When I'm not here, I'm not working. So this separation has allowed me to have my own personal time and to have family time, maintaining my sanity. And that's been one of the most important things I've discovered.
Super. And I want to probably get the academic view on this one. And as you look at the environment around us, Abhilash, as someone who heads an academy, what do you think is happening in this whole space around upskilling and reskilling, and what's missing from your perspective then?
Thank you so much, Prakash, for this question. And first of all, before I start, I hope all the listeners and viewers of this program of ours today are safe and healthy. Their families and communities are also keeping safe and are trying to be healthy today. This has been an unprecedented time. And if the speed of change was not lesser, the pandemic has in fact fast forwarded 10x times in the last 4 or 5 months. Especially in the financial services or BFSI space, the biggest question we ask ourselves is the balance of technical skills versus soft skills. Most of our work in finance is with people, individuals. We're helping them generate financial freedom for life. How do we move from an Excel sheet and move to the actual person's vision of the future? What is the individual thinking about? While technical skills are abound, our universities and colleges produce wonderful graduates, there is certainly a need to build in a softer part of it, the humane part of it. And that's an important skill we find that is to be developed in the current workforce. And also the reason why upskilling, reskilling or cross-skilling has to happen is because job world is changing very dynamically. You need to continuously learn about new products, new solutions. Adoption of technology is very, very rapid. If last 4 months is a reflection of where we have come to, I think this is going to be faster in the years to come. So from the consumer side, from the manufacturer side, service provider, training providers like us, the faculty, professor, academicians, adoption of technology, ensuring that the classroom experience changes to a personal experience when you're working remotely. All these things are changing rapidly and very fast. And so why people would want to upskill is to do a job better. Why would want to do reskill is to do something else which they are doing today. And why cross skill is because agencies as we call it are happening. There are jobs that one person could do and do a different job if there are agencies involved in that. So if you are a customer service person in an airline, you could well be a customer service person in a bank also, because your main skill is customer services, listening to customers. So I think these all Venn diagrams are fitting in terms of upskilling, cross-skilling and reskilling today.
Super. Venn diagrams are indeed fitting in. And Sairee, as an entrepreneur, and as the woman who's made sure that this is not a manel, as some panels tend to be, tell us, what are some of the challenges you see in the world we live in today?
Right. So before I actually go to the challenges, I want to tell you the silver linings. I think, some of the things that kind of have, transpired, through a couple of months. So I think all my life, at least last 6-7 years, we have been advocates of remote work. Okay? And we actually run a business line where we urge companies to go remote and sort of, so that a lot more women can come into the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, nothing has accelerated that process as much as this time. And I think that's one of those most interesting things that has transpired. But just from a overall challenges point of view, I think the pandemic is very harsh on everyone, but it's doubly harsh on women and more so working women, because it's kind of just made sure that they, whatever that little space they had for themselves has gone away because everybody's at home. They're still the primary caregivers. and there's a continuous tussle of power and resources, all at home. And there's also another aspect, which is just mental exhaustion, and having to deal with not only a new way of working, but also the stress that families are going through, whether it's loss of income or people who are sick or something else. So I think there is a lot of mental exhaustion, and also a rise in case of abusers that we see. We run a helpline, counseling helpline, and our abuse cases have doubled ever since the pandemic started. So clearly, the outlets for women are reducing, and that's scary. But on the silver side, we see that remote work has increased, and I think long term it will have a great effect on more women in workforce. And of course, I see now more women turning to micro entrepreneurship at a much accelerated pace, which is exciting.
So this is interesting, Sairee, because you did talk about how remote working is something you've been championing, particularly perhaps from a women's standpoint, make sure more women come into the workforce. And yet, what we are seeing perhaps is a rise in domestic violence and potentially far more stress on the working woman from home rather than perhaps the man at home. So that's an interesting paradox that you're seeing, right?
Yeah, it is, because I think what that's meant is that everyone's work has become women's work, right? Because there are no most people don't have help and nannies, and and of course everyone's at home. People are fighting right from bandwidth to rooms to working corners, and in India we still have small houses. We're not a country with a lot of space to ourselves. So I think these are some very real logistical challenges, and of course that leads to a lot of friction.
Sure. A woman's work has become everyone's work, and everyone is discovering how tough it is to be doing a woman's work. Well said. Kamal, one of the things that people think about when they think of learning and development and skill development is that these things are very good when the going is good, but when businesses and industries go through trouble or through headwinds, it tends to take a back seat. So tell us, as someone from the auto industry, which has had its fair share of challenges in recent times, what do you think of this whole concept? And do you think learning and development is taking a back seat? How important is it? Where does it figure in your priorities now?
Yeah, Prakash, thank you very much. And thanks for having me on this panel. Yes, I think, Prakash, that's a very interesting question. And the answer is very simple. I think we all have realized over a period of time how the times are changing. And today we are living in a paradigm where uncertainty is really the hallmark of everything we do, and yet we all aspire to still be able to navigate, strategize into some uncharted territories. Now, how do we do that? I think so that's something very, very critical for us to know, that what happens in such a scenario. You're expected to get into uncharted territories, and which are absolutely changing by the hour, let me say. So now how do you do? I think you do it with the help of your people, with the help of skill sets of the future. And now, which are those skill sets of the future which you need to know? And that's the thing. So you got to decipher some of the mega trends which are happening in the world around you, and then see what does it mean to you? What does it mean in terms of skill sets? What does it mean in terms of business? So let me give you an example of few mega trends. For instance, today, I believe some of the mega trends which impact our business are typically things like digitalization. That's happening. That's absolutely impacting every business or every sector of the economy or society in any case. The second one is rapid urbanization, which is meaning a lot to us in terms of opportunities as well as challenges, because there's lots of issues with regards to congestion as well. The third, of course, is customers do not want products anymore. They want solutions, outcomes only. So you got to change your business models. The fourth, of course, is very, very crucial, is the third one also points to the fact that one single entity or one single organization cannot fulfill the entire customer solution. So you got to collaborate. The need to collaborate, therefore, emotional EQ, the emotional quotient of people, the ability to able to to trust each other, to collaborate. So these are some of the skill sets which are coming to the fore very, very clearly. So if you try to juxtapose the mega trends with certain skill sets required to be able to drive the change. Another fourth mega trend is holistic sustainability. Whatever you do has to be socially inclusive, economically efficient, and environmentally friendly. So what are the skill sets which your team needs to be able to? So I think creativity, growth mindset, ability to innovate, ability to fail quick, learn fast. So I think lot of number of skill sets, and that's what we are doing, Prakash. During the time when we were working at 50% capacity, we have really let our leadership team, middle management team go through a lot of these programs run by Volvo Group University to be able to remain up to speed.
That is so good to hear. Who would have thought that if you were working in a shop floor in an automotive factory, you'll get lessons in creativity and mindset. But that sounds so cool. Amit, coming to you, Kamal did talk about mega trends and this whole digital piece that everybody sees coming at us. And as someone who's probably seen that up close, I'm very keen to hear from you on how do you see digital, as a threat to the way we are and the way we do business. And that might cause a need perhaps to say that people need to reskill and upskill. And then I want to come back and ask you, something related to digital, which is, does it become an enabler when it comes to upskilling? So what are your thoughts?
So thanks for having me on the panel, Prakash. So at Adobe, our mission as a company is to enable companies to make a digital transformation. So that's what Adobe is all about, right? We are trying to really move companies into the digital world. My group is within that focused on the learning part of a business and helping our customers move all the learning to digital. So whether it is virtual training, whether it is classroom training, or how they do training. So I think for us this time, the COVID times have actually been in some sense a boom time, because everybody is suddenly within 3 months being forced to move all their training, their face-to-face training to online. And I think we are in phase 1 of that digital transformation as far as learning is concerned, because I think effective learning is more than just having a video. It's not just about having a instructor come on video or having like a bunch of videos which have been shot, because what you really need to figure out is, one of the challenges from a learning perspective is that everybody is so busy right now. I think that if you look at the nature of humanity right now, is that everybody is overwhelmed. There is too much information. There's too little time. People like Sanket are working 16 hours a day. I mean, when does he have time to learn anything, right? I mean, all of us are in that stuff. We're juggling so many balls. And so one of the things is for our learning departments to figure out how to get learning, to learn from sort of the consumer media companies, maybe learn from the advertising world, which is how do we sort of take learning to the people, right? I mean, how do we find out when they have those pockets of time and where they congregate, right? So rather than assuming that there will be this, catalog where people are going to come and take learning, I think in the real world it doesn't happen that way, right? The learning has to go where you are, and if you're spending time on email, maybe there's a little learning module which figures out what you might be wanting to learn. And so we need to get all these technologies of digital, which is personalization, curation, because there's too much of information out there, right? So how do you get either humans to figure out what is the right thing? So get experts to help curate what you might want to learn, or have machines actually curate for you what might be the right things for you, and then bring it to you in kind of the sizes which fit into your lifestyles. It might be a snacky video of 5 minutes, or it could be a longer course depending on what you're trying to do. So I think we are trying to innovate on the learning side beyond video to really understand how to close the loop, measure the impact of learning, and also try to figure out when you learn something, is it changing your job, right? How do you really figure out, does it have long-lasting impact? Because one of the things about learning is it sort of got a half-life of 3 months, and then you learn something, and then you go back to your normal state, right? And then so that's the other.
But tell me, Amit, you talked about all these snack bites, snack-sized learning modules, but do you think there's almost like an overdose of online training? And before, with all those numbers on COVID, Do you think it's not very far away before someone dies of webinar overload?
Yes. No, exactly. I think I am totally with you, which is why I'm saying that there is too much quantity of information, webinars, there are too many webinars, there are too many YouTube videos, there is too much learning. And I think for all of us, if we had a curator, right, it's sort of this expert person for you, like a concierge, who could actually figure out based on where you are, where you want to go, and say, these are the 3 things which you should watch, right? I mean, in this week. We don't have that, right? What we get is we get this deluge of information. And I think in the end, everybody gets paralyzed because they don't know what to watch, what's good, what's not. And so I totally agree with you that I think right now we are just throwing things at people and hoping, they'll just keep watching everything. And that's not going to happen, I think, right?
Sure. But can't let you go with that one then. If you think of 3 things, tell us what are a couple of online training pieces that you've experienced and found superbly useful.
So I'll give you 2 examples of I could, more business-like things and more. So one of the things which, I took this new role a year ago, which is like a P&L role, and I'm trying to understand. I came from a world where I was more of a product and technology person, and now I run a sales team and I run a customer success team. And so one of the things which I am really finding useful online is I think this was in LinkedIn Learning, which is just this value selling, like how to sort of sell in the modern world, right? How does one really figure out what are the business problems to be solved and effectively sell? So that was one thing which was very useful for me to learn. The second thing is I with COVID, we are all sort of discovering hobbies, and so one of the things I used to do when I was in college was I was trying to learn the guitar, and I gave up, and now I sort of picked up my guitar again after 20 years, and I went and subscribed to this thing called Guitar Tricks, and that's been great because I can actually now, technology has evolved into 20 years that you can actually sit at home and learn an instrument.
So if we have
works, right? So
if we have some time in the end, I know what we're going to do, but that's terrific. But I want to quickly get to the other panelists and see if I can get quick responses on one thing or one program that you might have taken online or learned something online in recent times, which you would recommend to other people. Who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Yeah, Sairee.
So I think I've discovered 2 things. One is this cute little curation phenomena called Substack. So I have been sort of following people on Substack around, various topics I want to learn on. Like I've been very keen on learning about microinsurance, so I've been, following some folks and about venture capital or very, very specific topics. And the amount of curation and high quality content is amazing. And the other thing is there's something called the Lunch Club, which is actually a peer-to-peer hangout. Go meet an interesting person online and learn about their work life. And, so it's good old networking done very, very nicely and in a more efficient manner. And I love that. I think we're all like CIOs of our lives now. We got to sort of curate what we consume and sort of keep refreshing it. And then I enrolled actually for a program, which is a spiritual program. And I think it was more to sort of empty yourself instead of fill yourself, and more to do with, hey, let it all go and then see what is. So I think this was a good time to sort of do that, because in 20 years of my own career, I've never been home this long, and there was never this kind of, time to do this. So I'm using it to actually slow down and say, okay, meditate 2 hours a day.
Super stuff.
Yeah.
Sanket?
Yeah, Prakash, I'll share with you. So a couple of things. One thing is that I've taken a few Udemy courses, and like Amit, I come from an R&D background, and it's nice to get back to basics and brush up on your programming skills. That's been absolutely amazing. But the other part I'd like to share is every morning, I go for a very long walk. And that's my meditation and my exercise. Now, during that, I listen to some very interesting podcasts. Like currently, I'm listening to a podcast called The Next Big Idea. It's a very nice curated one. Absolutely love it. And it's through this that great ideas come. And, you're able to bring those into your life. Now, as Amit was talking, I was thinking of one of the things I heard on that, which is there was an experimentation done where, in most universities, you have the main professor teaching the course, and you have the assistants who teach the sections where you can go to and ask questions, etc. So they did an experiment where out of the 5, teaching assistants, one of them was a AI chatbot. And since it was all virtual, people could not tell the difference. But what they realized is that the chatbot's performance and the students using the chatbot were much ahead of everybody else. After some time, they did figure out it's a chatbot, and they were. What happens is when it's a situation like that, information lookup is faster, but the other part is you can be vulnerable. You're not afraid to expose that you don't know something, right? And using that kind of a paradigm, I think we can learn a lot on how to impart education even within the corporate.
What a great thought. You're not afraid to admit that you don't know something, and that's probably going to open the doors to your learning. That's super. Thanks so much. Abhilash?
Fortunately for me, Prakash, we have our own AI-enabled learning experience platform at NSE. It's called the NSE Knowledge Hub. It's specifically created for learners in the BFSI domain. While we just launched it in January, for me, it was the first quarter, the first 6 months. So actually, I was spending a lot of time on it in terms of helping curate journeys for learners as we were developing the product. So I got involved in it, and I brushed up my own skills about equity markets, capital markets broadly. Found it very interesting that the AI engine could actually curate content, understanding my personal behavior. So while I was working on the system and the process itself, I got really involved in that. And fortunately for me, those small bite-sized nuggets that I was getting on a daily basis as smart cards to me helped me brush up my skills and also see what would a learner experience. So for me, it was work and learning both at the same time. But something else that I picked up recently was, it's called the Infinity Walk. Since we are all in our homes, I don't get to hit the gym. I used to go walking and running every morning. So this is an Infinity Walk, which Tamilian Siddhas used to practice many, many years back. Last 20 years, it was put into modern context by a psychologist. It's actually a Siddha walk or Infinity Walk. You walk in a circle of 8 or infinity in your home, and it's something which I got excited into, and I researched about it, the benefits of health on it. And so that's what I've done in my recent learning.
Fabulous. Kamal?
Yeah, Prakash. I think two things which I would bring to the fore here for discussion is, I think the first one was the culture rejuvenation workshop, which we went through with our entire management team, which was a phenomenal exercise, because the idea is that we as an industry are running on a 2-speed engine. There is one engine which is pulling you back probably 100 years. This pandemic is pulling you back, saying don't go out of home, stay at home, just like our forefathers used to do about 50, 100 years ago. So that's one speed engine. The other engine is the engine which is talking of exponential growth in technologies and all that stuff. So the idea was, how do we perform with the existing well-known technologies and also transform to the high technologies of the future? So perform and transform at the same time. So that was the theme. I think to me it was of great value. The other thing was, which was a very calming and a soothing influence on me, was leading with care. I think this is something which we went through, leading with care for the organization, for the team, for the family, and for self. So 4-pronged themes of taking care of yourself, your family, your teams, and your organization. So I think I will bring to the fore these two experiences which I have gone through. Yeah.
Leading with care.
Yeah.
Sanketa, I want to go back to that lovely last line you had about, what is it that drives us to change? And I'm just wondering, as the head of an organization, what do you do to make sure that the organization does not slip into the comfort zone? What can drive this need to constantly reskill, upskill, and get better, rather than thinking, we are successful, we are meeting our targets, life is good, and then you don't know what's going to come and disrupt you? So what have you done to make sure Intuit doesn't slip into the comfort zone?
Yeah, first of all, Intuit has a history of reinventing itself every so many years. So it's in the culture and it's taught, every time. Now, what we do is that we have a great culture of transparency. So everybody shares their goals and their metrics with everybody else. And we have a very safe forum, and I call it safe because you're open to, criticize somebody's performance, to be able to provide some constructive criticism, some guidance for them to improve. And it's in there that you come up with great ideas. People collaborate, people come up with thoughts about what else can be done. Oftentimes, one team does not know what the other team is doing. But if you do, there's a potential for you to reach out your hand, hold the other person's hand and come up with something, that's a wonderful add-on, 1+1 = 3 kind of stuff. So those are the kind of things we greatly encourage. What I found is that, you cannot ask somebody to sit down and innovate. That just doesn't happen. But you create an environment which is safe and very collaborative, and amazing things happen, Prakash. And all of us are naturally very entrepreneurial in nature. It's just the enablement that needs to be provided.
Wow. Collaboration. Who would have, I think it's a fabulous way to continue to try and innovate and get better. Sairee, from an individual standpoint, how does this work? And I'm asking this particularly because you've been, in a sense, championing this idea of helping half the world become as good as they can be. So what can you do to actually help someone ensure that they don't kind of rest content with where they are and have that constant urge to get better?
Right. So look, our sort of thesis has always been around communities. I mean, our investment is in the community because I think in tough times, that's what sort of holds you together. And that's what we are seeing, on the SHEROES platform as well. So a couple of things, moment, the pandemic hit, we did a couple of things that sort of, we figured we need to do. One is we increased capacity on our helpline. So we run a counseling helpline. So we thought, let's sort of like, make this more and more available and make it easy for people to find a safe space, Secondly, we ramped up efforts around reskilling and learning for a lot of women who are either now looking for a second income because, the husband lost his job or something of that sort. So now they needed to sort of support the family. And third was we ramped up a little bit on our own entrepreneurial focus, because I think the truth is, we're all entrepreneurs now, and a large part of this country is going to be entrepreneurs and not job seekers. So that kind of sort of came through for us, and all our efforts were sort of targeted around these three, items as we sort of, saw this whole thing unfold. But personally, I think the real investment as a founder, as a leader, one needs to make is in trust. I think building trust is a very important skill, and it's a hard skill because, there are many variables in place. And for example, one things we've been doing is regularly communicating with our community, making communication easier and easier for everyone so that nobody feels left out. People can reach out, people can have a safe space to talk. And that kind of has helped us sort of keep it all together. Sure. I think we can't correct a lot of things, but if people feel supported, they can pick up their lives and sort of find their own roads.
Sure. We can't correct a lot of things, but I guess we can all make a beginning somewhere. So I think it's interesting. And a lot of this whole idea of upskilling looks very good, when you are as successful as the five of you are, and you can look at it and say, you need to upskill. But I'm wondering, when people are in the middle of, climbing the ladder, getting that right job, fixing the relationship with a boss that they're struggling with, upskilling can sometimes look very, very challenging. And what I want to do with each of you is to say, imagine, what would you be telling your 21-year-old self, right? With all that you know today, what would you wish you would do differently? And therefore, what would your advice to your younger self be? And maybe Abhilash, you can start and tell us that one.
I wish this question was asked many, many years back. I could have done much better in life. I think the first thing I would tell myself is let the degree not define you. Let your qualification not define you. And probably it's the times that we were in many, many years back when I was 21 years old that your degree defined who you were. So you pursued your careers in that defined path. The second thing I would tell myself is growth and success is not linear. You got to go sideways, backward, forward in the pursuit of your goal. And if you have a goal at number one, so when you're 21 years old, the world looks very fuzzy. The world looks very exciting. Probably pick one plan, work on it, learn your way through, meet some smarter people, find a mentor. I think it's very important that early in life, if you find a mentor, you're able to plug into the experience and wisdom of some smart, gifted people. Half of your learning happens there itself. So I think this is something which I would tell myself if I were to go back when I was 21 years old.
Super. Thanks so much. Amit.
Okay, so I think one of the things I would say is that, your career is a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? I think when you're a 21-year-old, you think, you look around you, you look at your peers, you compare yourself, right? You try to sort of say, okay, measure yourself by how much, your college mates are, who's got what job and what are they earning. And I think you go back and say all of that doesn't matter, right? And what really matters is to build this solid foundation, because one of the things which can happen is that you start, you start doing things which are fashionable, you learn things in a shallow way, and then you never really build that culture or habits of actually going deep into things and mastering things, right? Yeah. So and that takes time. So I think I would just say be patient, learn things really well, build that foundation, and in the long run, that's what's going to pay off, rather than if like these days ML machine learning is the hot spot, and rather than just learning, okay, I want to learn enough to, fake my way through it, really go deep into it. That's what I would say.
Sure. Super. Life is a marathon and not a sprint. Don't we all wish we knew that one a few years ago? Kamal, what would you be telling yourself, your younger self?
Yeah, I think 3 or 4 things. Number one, have a can-do attitude. I think attitude, to my mind, is the most important. Second, I would like to add at least one new skill every year to myself. That's very important. The third is I would like to display mental and emotional flexibility and adaptation. This is very, very important. And last but not the least, which I would tell my younger self is that embrace transparency in every aspect of your life. Because to my mind, if you ask me one thing, that's transparency is the most crucial mantra for success, because transparency leads to developing trust, and trust leads to collaboration, and collaborations and partnerships lead to winning solutions. So I think that would be my advice.
Super. Trust, collaboration, attitude. And I hope you didn't miss the bit where Kamal said, I would advise my young self, and then he corrected himself, younger self. Yeah. So I think a man is only as old as he feels. So terrific. Sanket, your turn. What would you be telling your younger self?
So, 3 words that I live by would be something I would tell myself, which is respect, honesty, and fun. So respect meaning, you should treat everybody the same. I treat the office guard the same way as I treat our CEO, Sasan Kutarsi, because you have amazing opportunities to learn from anybody. Second is honesty. Be honest with yourself as to what you know, what you don't know, which leads to vulnerability, and plus honest with your feelings with others. Those kind of honest relationships go a long way. Superficiality only goes so much. And finally, last but the most important one is have fun. Life is short, as we are seeing with COVID, with mortality staring us right in the face over the past so many months. It's important to be able to enjoy each and every day and have fun doing whatever it is you like to do. Without that, what's the point?
Priceless advice. Treat your CEO the way you treat your security guard. Sorry, the other way around. Treat your security guard the way you might treat your CEO. I think that's fabulous advice. And I think all young people out there, I think this is terrific stuff. Sairee,
yeah,
you probably have the least number of years to travel back, as you tell your 21-year-old self. But tell us.
All right. So I think definitely tell my younger self to be more audacious, more risk-taking. Even though I've taken risks, I just feel that, a person when younger can take a lot more risk, and your learning curve just goes, much faster with that. Second is, I think the ability to hold contradictory thoughts in your mind at the same time. You're really good at coding, but you also want to learn alternate therapies. So you can do both, and nothing ever goes waste. The truth is, it all adds up, Yep. And I think a lot of our sort of thought process is engineered to say, no, you should just go this way. You should be a CA, you should be an engineer. And I just feel that, being able to sort of straddle very, very opposite ends of the spectrum is a very underrated skill. And in today's world, it's much, much needed. And I think third is take time to make yourself happy, whatever makes you happy. So whether it's travel or writing or learning new things or doing things that may not sort of, have the approval, may not have the TRP approval in your circles, but still do it for yourself because, you live only once and, you never know what's going to transpire. And the truth is, if you're happy, you're going to take much high quality decisions. I think it impacts the kind of decisions we take for ourselves. Are they fear-based in decisions or are they joy-based decisions? And I think that really changes the spectrum of our life.
Sure. And I'm hoping that this has been priceless advice for all of you listening in, because I can see, that there is a lot that we can all do. And remember, someone said this, it's never too late to become what you might have been. So it doesn't matter that you're not 21 anymore, but it's never too late to get started. I think you've had some fantastic advice out there. Abhilash, a quick question for you. As someone who's been associated with executive education, and I just want you to tell everybody listening in two things. First, from your experience, what's been the single biggest gain or the single biggest difference that people have experienced having been through an executive education program? And second, what's been the biggest barrier that stops people from going in for executive education?
Fantastic question, Prakash. Executive education is for, as the name suggests, for mid or senior career professionals. It is at that point in time, most of our behaviors have already been solidified. We think we understand who we are. We think we know what we know. And since we have been successful coming out so far, that is the standard recipe to succeed in the future. Now, these are some of the hurdles that stop people from going in for executive education. There's always a need, as we say, for a coach in life to help you do what you can do. You are successful, but you could be better professional. You could help others to be successful if you take a distilled version or some toolkits of learning as you progress into the next step in your life. Because at a certain level in your career, it is transformational. You don't only perform, you transform also, as one of the panelists just mentioned. And it is that point in time when you need expert help. Plugging into executive education, learning from professors who've been working with executives like you for many, many years, it is the distilled data that they have, the information that they have, the cases that they have, experiences, and also learning from the peer group. Being in a class of smart, gifted professionals like you, 25, 30 senior executives, everybody comes from a different lens of learning in life. Just plugging into their collective wisdom is itself a learning experience. Being in a, let's say, a crucible, being in a curated environment, I think this is the biggest takeaway people could have stepping into executive education. But the bottleneck or the hurdles at times are, we all think we all know what is to be done in life. We have reached here, but we don't realize the world is moving at a faster pace than how we are learning. Our brains haven't evolved in the last 50 years the way our adoption of technology or the workplace has evolved. It's a simple example I can give you.
Sure. And I think this brings me to two gentlemen here who actually have been colleagues at some stage in their careers, Amit and Sanket. I'm very impressed. Both of you have fabulous engineering degrees, which people would give their right hand for. And then what do? You go and do an MS. And that's clearly something that puts you into that, stratosphere of few people who are getting it right. And then you go and do an MBA. So tell me, as you look back, what has been the role of continuing education in your career success? How do you see it? Amit?
So I think one of the things which I've always tried to do is try new things, experiment. I was like very restless in my career. I was really trying to figure out this intersection between what I enjoy and what I think I can be really good at, right? What are my strengths? And it took me a long time. I think that journey is still probably going. I mean, I'm still in that journey. And so I've always tried to, and that has forced me to, I think one of the things which, like, how do you force yourself to reskill or upskill? And one of the things is to keep trying new things, because when you move from, an engineering role. So when Sanket and I worked together, I was doing very hardcore R&D work. I was down in, very, very solitary work. And I got really, after a while, after 6-7 years of doing that, I got burnt out, and I said, maybe this isn't making me happy anymore. And maybe there is a certain cachet, but it's not making me happy anymore. So I said, okay, let me try, try different things, right? Be a manager, be a product manager, be an entrepreneur. And because of that, I think all of these things, my MBA was something which I did as a part-time MBA, which was actually great. I was actually working in the daytime. I would go and go to Berkeley in the evenings. And it was amazing because I was actually even, I was at that time I'd started a company, and I could, it was really a great combination where I could apply some of the things I was learning, which I'd never really formally learned. And so I think that's the part where it's not just the education, but it's also the part that because you are playing, different types of companies, different domains, that keeps you excited about your career rather than sort of starting to, get really jaded about it.
And there is this 27-year-old chap in your organization, good quality engineer, done well for himself, and he's now thinking of an MBA. What would you advise him?
Well, I would say, first of all...
No, you wouldn't. You just say go, no go. You don't get too much of a choice.
No, I don't think there's I would say it depends on the person and why they're doing it. Because if they're doing it because it's the done thing, then I would say no, right? If it is something where they're doing for the right reasons, right? If they have introspected, and it is something where, it also plays to their strengths and aspirations. Because I think too many times we do an engineering degree because society expects us to do an engineering degree. We do an MBA because society expects us to do, that's the next thing to do. And if that's how he's thinking, I would say no. But if it's been well thought, I would say go do it because it adds new things to your, personality, your development.
Super. Yeah. And Saket, how about you? What have you done to future-proof, to keep yourself future-proof, as it were?
Well, I think nobody is really completely future-proof, and that amount of vulnerability we need to have to be humble. So I'll answer the last question you asked, Amit, first. What would I advise? My advice will always be go for it, because you have to figure it out. Unless you do something, you don't know what it's all about. And for me, growing up as a mathematician and computer scientist, I lived in the binary. Right? It was a 1 or a 0 or a black or white. And what I learned as a part of my MBA was how to be in the gray. And to me, that was really, really important. Not having definitive answers, but yet being comfortable with it. And what's very interesting is that computer science is now venturing towards quantum computing, which is neither black or white. It's also in the gray. So it's been an amazing journey. And, the power of decision-making is something that I learned quite a bit in my MBA, and that's one thing I'm very, very happy with.
Sairee, one of the things that people don't often talk about is the whole idea of attitude as a skill.
Yeah.
So you often hear people talk about upskilling and reskilling, but no one says, up attitude kar lo ya re-attitude kar lo. Hota nahi hai. So what do you think around this whole idea of attitude, and what's your take?
Absolutely. So I'll answer the attitude question, but I want to tell you my MBA story. So I'm a liberal arts graduate. I went to JNU. I studied Russian literature for my master's. I did my MPhil in international relations. And then I did an MBA. And you have to hear why I did an MBA. I started work very early in life. And, by the time I was finished with my MPhil, I had worked for about 5 years with various projects and stuff. And I figured, I just don't know how to package this well. I don't know the terms that the business world uses. And I always felt like, dude, I need to know how to talk like business people. So I went and did an MBA because I wanted to learn how business people talk. Okay. Yeah. And it was like, obviously a very, different time. But I totally think that attitude is actually the biggest skill you need in today's environment. And if you have it, you're already like, a notch ahead, or it sets you apart. And I also feel that it sort of helps you sort of make your choices. And I want to share a small story here. I met this guy, and who was an ex-mariner, randomly, through a common connect. And he said, look, I've been sailing all my life, and I want to solve this problem of sending good news from home to shippies who are sailing, on merchant navy ships worldwide. And I want to solve it. And I said, sounds really exciting. And so I asked him, what do you want? He said, look, I'm looking for somebody to run this. I want somebody on this team. And it seemed really genuine, and it was a bit of a risk, but I said, look, I think this sounds exciting. So I put my hand up and I said, look, I'm in, I'll help you. And turns out that became my first startup. And that whole journey actually changed my life. Like just showing up for that meeting and putting my hand up, really changed my life. I mean, none of this would have happened, and I would be, sort of leading a very, very different life. And I think it is really, really important in terms of how this shapes up. I also want to share another thing that's going on. As part of SHEROES, one of the things we're doing is we're running this COVID war room where volunteers from our community, who are mostly homemakers all across the country, are working as screeners with doctors, so there's this whole telemedicine setup. And these are women who really are not that well resourced. They have, full day jobs and they're at work, but they're taking out time to speak to like 50 to 100 patients every day so that they can contribute. And it's really helping sort of, make things better. And I can't think of anything better that I've seen of late, their attitude of, look, we can do this, we will find time, we will squeeze, our work day, we'll figure this out, and that's such an amazing attitude because it's infectious. They say what you focus on expands, and when you focus on these, things that make things better for other people, I think it's a viral effect, and we all can do with more of that and not the virus.
Great story. Attitude matters. Kamal, you're the man who talked about attitude, and you're this passion guy. But tell me, can you actually upskill someone for passion or for attitude? Skills to ho jata hai, but what do you feel about attitude?
For me, the most important attribute a person can have in today's world is an attitude, is a positive attitude, a can-do attitude. If you have that, and if there is a fire in the belly, then you can unlearn, relearn, upskill. You can do anything which you want. So I think the road to growth is very, very clearly, we have to reset our assumptions. I think it's not important whether attitude is important or upskilling is important. I think the key thing is that there has to be fire in the belly. There has to be a purpose. People have to reset their assumptions of the future, the emerging future. That's very, very clear. Organize for that future. Very, very important. Then advance with agility. We cannot sit and take our usual time to respond. We need to respond with a lot of agility. We will make mistakes. That's okay. Then we have to digitalize everything. I think there's one very, very simple thing we got to really learn, each one of us. I come from a hard vehicle manufacturing company, automotive industry. Today, if you look at my truck, if I was to see the amount of software which has gone into a truck, if I was to write the software code on a A4 paper, the height of that paper would be as much as Eiffel Towers. So that's the level of software which goes into a Volvo truck. So I think that's something which we need to understand. These are some of the most important imperatives in life, and attitude, to my mind, is going to be the driver for everything.
Attitude is going to be the driver, says the man who drives a lot of our vehicles. Thank you so much. Before we come to an end, I just thought, we've got a lot of L&D folks, learning and development people listening in out there. And I'm just wondering, what would be that one piece of advice that you would offer them to make sure that they deliver on the business agenda? They want to do well. They want to ensure that they're supporting the business cause. So as leaders, what's that one piece of advice that you would offer to L&D folks? Sanket, you want to go first?
One thing, of course, is to educate people how to function better in this kind of thing. But, I tell you there are two big holes that I see right now. We're a very functional organization from an engineering perspective, but two big holes. One is how to teach people to do something like whiteboarding in a virtual world. It's a big gap, and there's something that engineers thrive on. And the other part, which is very much part of our company culture, is offsites. Offsites are amazing opportunities to get to know each other, to be able to come up with great ideas. And it's very difficult to do on something like this. We have been doing them, but as you know, the nature of something like, say, Zoom is that when one person's speaking, the other person can't, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you enable something that, using the current technologies that kind of approximates what we used to have? If we're able to do that, then I think life would start becoming more and more normal. I don't know the answer to that, but it's just a question I'm posing.
Sure. It's interesting you're talking about how Zoom does not allow one person to speak when someone else is speaking. And I think a lot of people want to take that back into their real rooms when it gets physical to make sure people aren't talking at the same time. Amit, what's your piece of advice?
So advice to L&D folks, I think I mentioned this earlier. I would say that learn the techniques which the marketing and advertising worlds use, and make your learning. Measure yourself. The KPIs typically the learning community uses are very different from what let's say a news organization or a media organization. And I think if learning was to adopt things like stickiness and time spent and how many people are coming back, the kind of stuff which you do there, and really figure out how to get people to come, right? Rather than sort of saying, oh, nobody wants to learn. I think they have to take that ownership and say, how do we sort of make our learning become more adopted and more viral? I think that mind shift, I would say, would be my advice, is like learn the tricks of how any kind of video site does, and how they measure their success.
Super. Thanks. Abhilash?
Yeah, I would have three advice, but which they feed into each other. Number one, every L&D professional has to be a passionate learner themselves. Understanding of human behavior, whom are they working for and why are they working is important, understanding that behavior. Number two is treat learners as consumers. Each one of us behaves differently. That consumers' attitude for learners is very important to understand what learners want. And third is use data, analytics, and metrics to define and understand and interpret that behavior. So these are my three advices. Be passionate learner yourself, treat learners as consumers, and third, use data and metrics as much as you can to personalize this experience for learners.
Super. Kamal, your turn.
Yeah, I think there are two steering systems in any company. One is culture and one is structure. So I would request the entire HR community to focus more on culture than on structure. I think that's the one change which they need to go through. Second is they should transform from rule-driven HR landscape to more values and principles-driven landscape. That's the second piece of advice. And I think third and the most important is somehow move to the power of collective wisdom instead of silos working. I think most organizations, without any exceptions, suffer from this problem of silo working instead of using the power of collective wisdom. So I think these are the three things which I would leave the thought for you.
Super. Sairee?
All right. So I think, look, we live in an entrepreneurial world now. Everybody is now more or less an entrepreneur because there's so much of problem solving and pushing the envelope we all need to do. So I think somehow engineering it, in an organization by giving people the space they need, in some ways making way for serendipity to happen, and not just sort of, and I think a little bit of that comes from connection before correction. So I think sort of, letting people be the CIOs of their lives and sort of fostering trust and creativity, I think unleashes a lot of this capability. Everybody is an infinite learner. Everybody has infinite problem skills. But sort of, I think sometimes letting people be their real selves, brings out like magical powers.
Super stuff. Thank you so much for all those words of wisdom. And that's all we have for you in this discussion. And before we end, I just thought I must say thank you very much to all five of you. I think it's been a lot of fun engaging in conversation with you. I must confess, I have learned a hell of a lot. And if those of you listening in, if you've been making as many notes as I have, then maybe we don't have a stack going up to the Eiffel Tower, but we've got enough to work on for the next few years. So thank you very much for listening in. I'd also like to thank ETHRWorld for actually making this happen. And I think it's so cool that even in these times, we could all come together. As I was listening in to all those words of wisdom, I was reminded of a line from Eric Hoffer, and I think it's probably good for our times. And Eric Hoffer says, in times of change, learners will inherit the earth, while the learned will find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. Yeah, I think it's powerful advice for all of us. Thank you very much. And here we are. This is Prakash Iyer signing off.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.